Michael Patrick Shields with you all across the state of Michigan. On the heels of Osama bin Laden being taken out yesterday, the Philadelphia Police Department, for instance, are doing hourly checks of the mosques and the synagogues. There is an intelligence group that monitors online jihadist activities. They say vague threats are posted on a certain forum that's an outlet for official al-Qaeda messages, and here's the message, quote, "America will reap the same if the news is true," said one of the postings on the website. "The lions will remain lions and will continue moving in the footsteps of Osama," said another. Adding to the concern now is a Defense Department report released last week by WikiLeaks that a Guantanamo detainee had knowledge of al-Qaeda, and he says that al-Qaeda possesses a nuclear bomb somewhere in Europe. The detainee said he was told by an al-Qaeda associate that if bin Laden were captured or killed, the bomb would be detonated in the United States. Now, apparently there is some talk that they've had trouble moving the bomb if it exists, but if they could move it, al-Qaeda operatives would use it. That's, remember, just chatter on jihadist websites. We're looking for Congressman Mike Rogers this morning to find out how credible that is. Nevertheless, it's very scary, but that's what terrorism is all about. Senator Stabenow, Debbie Stabenow, the Democrat, says, quote, "Osama bin Laden murdered thousands of Americans, yet evaded justice for years. Our country is united in gratitude to the brave men and women of our intelligence and counterterrorism community and our troops for the sacrifices in keeping us safe from terror." And Congressman Rogers, who is chair of the House Intelligence Committee, said, "We've brought justice to a terrorist with the blood of thousands of Americans on his hands and brought justice to the families of his victims. This closes a key chapter in the war on terror. It's hard to imagine an end to al-Qaeda without the death of bin Laden. And while we can all certainly celebrate this important victory, the fight will go on. We will not stop until al-Qaeda has been eliminated." President Obama phoned George W. Bush, the former president, yesterday to tell him about the news of bin Laden's death. Bush called the operation a momentous achievement that marks a victory for America and for people who seek peace around the world and for those who lost loved ones on September 11th. And President Bush said he congratulated President Obama and the men and women of our military and intelligence communities who devoted their lives to this mission. They have our everlasting gratitude. Former President Bill Clinton, who was in office, you remember the first time the World Trade Center was bombed in the parking garage below back in 1993, congratulated President Obama, the national security team, and the members of the armed forces. It is 48 minutes after the hour right now. Leaders around the world heralding the death of Osama bin Laden. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says it's a triumph for justice, and the Palestinian Authority agrees, giving its thumbs up to the death of al-Qaeda. The Palestinian government spokesman said getting rid of Osama bin Laden is good for the cause of peace worldwide, is what we're hearing this morning. Back here in Michigan, Kid Rock is defending his use of the Confederate flag at his concerts despite protests of his Great Expectations Award from the NAACP. He was recognized for his work on behalf of Detroit at the Civil Rights Organization annual Fight for Freedom Fund dinner yesterday. But there were protesters outside Cobo Center, and they burned the Confederate flag, and they say that that flag is a symbol of hatred, bigotry, racism, and murder. And, well, Kid Rock says, we like the Confederate flag, but it's got nothing to do with any of that stuff. Speaking of Detroit, the mayor of New York City, Michael Bloomberg, believes that the solution to Detroit's revival will come through an increase in immigration. Michael Bloomberg was on Meet the Press on Sunday and said that there would be many benefits if federal law required new immigrants to live in Detroit for 5 or 10 years. In other words, if you want to come to America, you got to do 5 or 10 years in Detroit. He said that would overpopulate Detroit almost immediately, and there would be businesses and people working, because the population of Detroit has fallen by more than 1 million in the last 60 years, and in the last decade, they've lost 25% of their residents. So here's Michael Bloomberg on Meet the Press yesterday.
Take a look at the big old industrial cities, Detroit, for example. Got a great mayor, Mayor Bing, but the population has left. You got to do something about that. And if I were the federal government, assuming you could wave a magic wand and pull everybody together, you pass a law letting immigrants come in as long as they agree to go to Detroit and live there for 5 or 10 years, start businesses, take jobs, whatever. You would populate Detroit overnight because half the world wants to come here. We forget, we whip ourselves a little bit too much. We still are the world's greatest democracy.
So if you want to come to the United States, you got to live in Detroit for 5 or 10 years. 888-900-9966. What do you think of that? Sort of happening on its own in the Dearborn area, where a lot of people were curious how would they respond in Dearborn with the huge concentration of people from the Middle East. And yesterday it was joy, a lot of horn honking and that sort of thing. The president and first lady are going to be on Oprah today as Oprah gets ready to wind down and finally retire from the Oprah Winfrey Show on May 25th. That show was taped ahead of time, though, so don't expect any questions to or from the president about the Osama bin Laden victory, the defeat of the madman terrorists. 9 minutes now before the hour. It's Michael Patrick Shields live in our American Metal Roofs studio. Have you been to their website yet, AmericanMetalRoofs.com? You might want to go have a look as you get ready for your spring cleanup here. The weather is finally turning decent. American Metal Roofs can show you how very simply you can save up to 50% on your energy bills. It's at AmericanMetalRoofs.com. It's Michael Patrick Shields, heard all across the state of Michigan, and you can call them too at 877-569-4700. We are going to continue, and Father Mark Inglet will join us from St. John's Student Parish. We'll talk about the Vatican reaction to the death of Osama bin Laden and the beatification of Pope John Paul II. All of this happening this weekend, and apparently it'll be not before Friday that they try to launch the space shuttle again. We'll have full coverage of that for you, too. It's Michael Patrick Shields.